Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gord McCall. I'm the Artistic and Executive Director of the Lyric Theatre here in downtown Swift Current, Saskatchewan. And it's my pleasure tonight to welcome you to the Lyric Digital Stage Write Out Loud book launch, a very special version of our Write Out Loud online series. Our host for this evening is going to be Terry Taves. She is a member of our Write Out Loud committee, and she will take us into the proceedings tonight. And she'll also share a lot of our feelings about this time of upheaval, of unrest, of the pandemic, of so many changes in the world. And I will ask her to speak, as she does so eloquently, about those things on our behalf. And also she'll introduce Dianne Miller and her book, which we are all very excited for you to share in tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the proceedings on to Terry Taves, and we'll see you after the book launch.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Write Out Loud on the Lyric Digital Stage. My name is Terry Taves, and I am a member of the Write Out Loud committee at the Lyric Theatre in Swift Current, Saskatchewan. When we are in the theatre, we begin this way. Because we are all treaty people, we acknowledge that this event, the Lyric Theatre and Swift Current, are located on Treaty 4 territory and the traditional lands of the Métis. We respect and honor the treaties that were made on all territories. We acknowledge the mistakes and harms of the past, and we are committed to moving forward in partnership with Indigenous nations in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Those acknowledgements and promises seem more important than ever given the events of recent weeks and even days. It has never been more important that we stand against racism and with those most affected by it, and that we work for meaningful change. I also want to acknowledge Pride Month and the LGBTQ community and the vibrant organization that is Southwest Saskatchewan Pride here in Swift Current and the area. We see you and we celebrate you. I'd like to take a moment to thank the Write Out Loud committee as well. Trish Airy, Jackie Cameron, Ann Hill, Andrea McCrimmon, Dianne Miller, Ashley Booth, and Catherine Foley. This group gets things done and makes things happen, and a large part of the success of this program is their enthusiasm and the time and effort they are willing to put in to bring you Write Out Loud. Tonight, it is my great pleasure to introduce a new event for Write Out Loud, a virtual book launch for my friend and fellow committee member, Dianne Miller, and her excellent memoir, Chalk Dust. Everyone who has been in a classroom in Saskatchewan, either as a teacher or a student, will find things that they recognize in these pages. Her stories will bring you to tears, either because you are laughing out loud or because you are touched by some of her observations and experiences. Dianne brings her memories alive, and she will surely bring back some of your own as well. Dianne's memoir is as varied and entertaining as the classes she taught. Her students and colleagues were lucky to have her, and we are fortunate to have her tell us a little bit about her book and about the process of memoir writing. Dianne will tell you how to get your hands on this book, and I can't recommend it highly enough. You will enjoy every page, and it would also make a great gift. Christmas, you know, is only 188 days away. Please sit back, relax, and let Dianne take you on a trip down memory lane. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much to Gord McCall and Terry Taves and the Write Out Loud committee for affording me this opportunity. It's exciting to have your very own book in hand, and I'm pleased to share it with you this evening. Chalk Dust, Memoirs of a Prairie Teacher, took shape over the last 20 years. Like all of you, I have stories that I love to tell. Stories about students and situations that are memorable because of their emotional or intellectual impact on me. The idea of a book emerged. I added to my collection of stories by interviewing several colleagues, and with their permission, have added their anecdotes into the book as well. I approached Your Nicholsworth Publishing in Regina, and with Heather Nichols' guidance and skillful editing, the book came to be. I also appreciate that I was awarded a grant through Creative Saskatchewan to aid in publication. My hope is that through this book, I can encourage many of you to record your own memories. Oral history fades and often mutates in the telling. So I believe our written histories are becoming more important. Please enjoy your cup of tea or your glass of wine as I share a few excerpts from Chalk Dust. I'll read in 2 15-minute segments with a musical surprise in between. In writing Chalk Dust, my original intent was to reflect upon the societal, pedagogical, and personal changes I experienced as a teacher. But the project grew to include my own education as a child in rural Saskatchewan. I assume some of you watching remember education as it was in the 1950s and 60s. Anyone who grew up in rural Saskatchewan and attended a village school is well aware of the advantages and disadvantages. The glaring disadvantage, at least to my student mind, was the distance from school. Apart from the time-consuming bus trips, it was nearly impossible to participate in extracurricular activities. On the positive side, we had a large extended family, and there wasn't anyone we didn't know. Our teachers were friends, neighbors, and sometimes relatives, and class sizes were small. We sat in straight rows of sturdy wooden desks, each with a drawer below the seat, and a working surface marked by a circular inkwell in the top right corner. We faced the teacher's desk, behind which stretched a chalkboard, the most valuable resource available to a teacher. Schedules, rules, and reminders had their space. We copied notes, the quick studies waiting patiently for those who processed information slowly or printed and wrote laboriously. The teacher demonstrated mathematics calculations and problems on the board, and we sometimes showed our work there. Those of us who loved to play school coveted those times we were allowed to use the chalkboard for fun at recess. Physical education generally involved a dodgeball or a baseball bat and a softball. As we got older, we played a modified volleyball in the undersized gym. In the winter, we'd be trundled off to the village skating or curling rinks. Music lessons were delivered through a weekly radio program from which we learned folk songs from around the world. I remember our teachers as caring, friendly, and conscientious. They taught much as they had been taught, and we students were oblivious to their limited resources and facilities. When I was in grade 3, my teacher, Mrs. Dickinson, encouraged my interest in writing by inviting all our parents to see the class perform a play I wrote. I vaguely remember something about a princess, but clearly recall the portable wooden stage, army green curtains on a wire, the costumes, and the props. Mrs. Dickinson rivaled Coco Chanel, fashioning her crepe paper designs. Afterward, she wrote me a note that said, "You're sure a great girl," sharing playful misspellings I treasured as a private joke between us. I've forgotten most details about my school days, but that note is indelible in my memory. My own teaching career began in September 1970 at Prince Philip Elementary School in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Mini skirts to shoulder pads to jeans, platform heels to stilettos to Birkenstocks, Basel readers and workbooks to individualized reading to balanced literacy. My perspectives on learning and life and fashion shifted often during my 30-some years in the field of education. By 1970, the feminist influences of the 60s had found a foothold among teaching professionals in Saskatoon. Even though men comprised the large majority of school board members, administrators, and junior and senior high school teachers, females pushed for change. When I began my career as a fourth grade teacher at Prince Philip School, I was too young and busy to realize just how far female teachers had progressed. I donned a pair of skimpy hot pants, styled my shag haircut, and marched off to school in my platform shoes. Only later did I marvel that it had only been a few years since women weren't allowed to wear trousers to school. Those hot pants, even worn with a slightly longer open front tunic, didn't leave much to the imagination. Thankfully, mandatory pantyhose and the firm thighs of youth created the illusion of respectability. I can only imagine the hand-wringing and eye-rolling there must have been in the offices of power. On day one of my teaching career, I managed to nervously climb the first rung toward competence. 37 grade 4 faces stared at me from their desks. I prayed they'd be willing to give this rookie a chance to prove herself worthy of their cooperation for the next 10 months. In spite of considerable experience during my elementary internship, my palms were damp and my mouth dry now that this class was my sole responsibility. I was also thinking I wouldn't last the whole day in my new shoes. In years 3 and 4, a large, newly constructed open area replaced our overcrowded portable classrooms. Norma, one of my colleagues, said, "It's just another granary." By the fall of 1972, the addition to Saskatoon's Prince Philip School was complete. It included a gymnasium, a designated science classroom, a single enclosed classroom, and a large octagonal space with skylights at the top of the high-peaked roof. It really was shaped like a granary, through which the giant auger of curriculum would pour the seeds of learning. It was our job to provide an environment that would allow the germination of those seeds in the minds and hearts of approximately 150 grades 4 and 5 students who shared the octagon and adjoining classroom. Open area was a design format derived from the one-room school, in which groups of students of varying ages and skill levels were taught. The goal was to create flexible groupings that changed with subject and student skill level. And by removing the walls, the teachers could work collaboratively. And in our case, it did work. It was a wonderful experience. In the end, Norma was correct in describing our fancy new open area as just another granary. She knew then what I eventually deduced, that the physical space doesn't determine the quality of education. The seeds of learning can germinate in a mud hut or a shack of corrugated tin, on a creek bank or on a trap line. That which occurs through the personal interaction between teacher and student is the key to learning, not the granary. Next stop in my teaching career was at Dawson Creek, British Columbia, where I worked as a learning assistance teacher. Through the years, I was lucky to participate in several fabulous outdoor education experiences, and this was one. Principal Pat O'Reilly of Crescent Park Elementary School was a staunch proponent of outdoor education. In the spring of the year, he invited me to accompany his grade 6 class on a trip into the Secunca River Valley. The river cuts a wide valley nestled along the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. My first recollection of the trip is from a viewpoint overlooking the river, forest, and western mountains. The vista was spectacular in itself. until we spotted a mother moose and her calf on the near side of the river. Even though we were a considerable distance away, the mother probably recognized a disturbance in her kingdom and was concerned for her little one. She hurried into the water and swam strongly to the other side, only to find the calf hadn't followed. I suppose he was either afraid or simply obstinate. Back across she swam, climbed out on the bank, and nudged Junior into the water. I can only imagine how she must have scolded him, in moose speak. He floundered a bit, but as he got the hang of moose paddling, the mother waded in and swam behind him until he was safely to the other side. That one vignette of nature had more impact than dozens of television documentaries. I remember my surprise when I discovered that Pat carried an unloaded rifle with him at all times, ammunition at the ready. When I'd taught in Saskatoon, we hadn't worried much about black bears, grizzlies, cougars, or a mama moose protecting her offspring. The campsite consisted of a few log shelters that provided rooftops over outdoor stoves, tables, and benches. We filled buckets and barrels with water from the lake and kept them and burlap sacks on hand to be sure an accidental fire didn't turn into devastation. The students erected their own tents and participated in fire building and cooking. Pat emphasized the need to control garbage and make as little impact on the site as possible. Latrines were dug, boys on the left, girls on the right. There was to be no peeing in the trees. Who knew? Safety didn't seem to be an issue when we all piled into the backs of 2 half-ton trucks to bump our way down a narrow logging road. We stopped about 1 kilometer in and embarked on a faint trail into the forest. With Pat and rifle in lead, we hiked quite a distance through stands of cottonwood, poplar, and spruce, climbing over numerous fallen logs. It felt as if we'd stepped into a giant meat locker. The sun, warm and bright back in the open, didn't fully penetrate the gloom on the forest floor. The smells of pine and damp leaves carpeting the ground reminded me of my childhood in the boreal forest near Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. Nevertheless, it wasn't long before we lost any sense of direction, and left to our own devices, would have wandered for days until we would have been ready to ask a passing grizzly to put us out of our misery. In any case, we relied on gun-toting Mr. O'Reilly to lead us to a magnificent stream. It burbled downhill over moss-covered rocks and deadfall, intent on fulfilling its purpose, which was to feed the Cyca River. Not content with simple observation, the students eagerly pulled off their hiking boots and socks and waded into the water. Their shrieks were deafening, as only adolescent shrieks can be, when they realized how icy it was. We probably didn't need the rifle after that. Time for a break from chalk dust. I'm pleased to introduce my friend and talented Swift Current musician, Dave Cyca, a former teacher also. Please enjoy 2 of his original songs from his CD, One of These Days.
Hi everyone. I'm very happy and honored to be part of this virtual book launch. Thank you very much, Dianne, for inviting me to play a couple of songs. And congratulations on your book, Chalk Dust, Memoirs of a Prairie Teacher. I did have a short career of 5 years as a teacher here in Swift Current, and your stories bring back many memories of my time spent at St. Joseph's and at Ashley Park Schools. I would like to start with a song called Different Tune. The setting is the Big I, or the Imperial Hotel here in Swift Current. I believe it's closed now, but it used to be a very popular night spot, and it attracted people from all walks of life. The song is about how different we all are, but also how much the same we all are. We all want the same things in life. So here we go, Different Tune. big eye painted on the outside wall. Nobody wants it to be last call. The noise is up, you shout into my ear. The till is chiming with the VLTs. How about the next dance, if you please? The Texas two-step, or maybe cheek to cheek. And everybody's dancing, everybody's dancing, everybody's dancing in the same room. Everybody's dancing, everybody's dancing, everybody's dancing to a different tune. Les is around you from Val-Marie, and he's got land as far as you can see. And his friend Allison works at the Grasslands Park. And Lucy makes a living selling real estate. And Dennis has the biggest buckle in the place. The chatter and the laughter and the different points of view. And everybody's dancing, everybody's dancing, everybody's dancing in the same room. Everybody's dancing, everybody's dancing, everybody's dancing to a different tune. It's Saturday night and we're out for a little fun. Everyone wants to matter to someone, to love and be loved every day. And when the doors close, we all choose our different ways. Well, Reggie played hockey, he did pretty well. He just about made it to the NHL. And his friend Jared, he sells stocks and bonds. And Ron and Elsa, they dance around the floor. They call out to Skip to play a little more. The band is hot, but it's getting late. And everybody's dancing, everybody's dancing, everybody's dancing in the same room. Everybody's dancing, everybody's dancing, everybody's dancing to a different tune. Yeah, everybody's dancing to a different tune. Well, thanks again, Dianne, for inviting me, and also congratulations again on your book. I'd like to end with a song called Ed's Upright Bass. A few years ago, my friend Ed Doyle had an unfortunate accident with his upright bass, and I wrote a song about it. It's called Ed's Upright Bass. Up in Big River, Ed's a happy man. When musician friends gather for a weekend jam, he took his upright bass that he wrapped in foam, and he packed it in the trailer and he took off from his home. Just a few miles out, he was humming along, when in the rear view mirror he saw that something was wrong. Things started to flap, and things started to fly, and what he saw next would make a grown man cry. 'Cause the wind picked up and the tarp blew off, and the strength of the bungee cords just wasn't enough. how it all happened, one can only guess. It was the day its upright bass became a downright mess. So he stopped the car and hit the flasher switch, and with a sinking heart he ran into the ditch. He picked up the pieces and he felt the pain, 'cause he knew he'd never walk this bass again. 'Cause the wind picked up and the tarp blew off, and the strength of the bungee cords just wasn't enough. How it all happened, one can only guess. It was the day its upright bass became a downright mess. So when he arrived, all his friends said hi, and they could tell that he had had a tear in his eye. So he told the story with a very sad face of why he had arrived not carrying his upright bass. 'Cause the wind picked up and the tarp blew off, and the strength of the bungee cords just wasn't enough. Ah, how it all happened, one can only guess. It was the day its upright bass became a downright mess. It was the day its upright bass became a downright mess. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thanks, Dave. Those are two of my favorite songs, partly because of their toe-tapping melodies, but also because they are wonderful examples of memoir set to music. I taught 12 years at the junior high school level in Yorkton and Swift Current, the last 3 as vice principal at W.A. Beatty. This was one memorable day. My one and only experience with the strap left me shaken and vowing abolishment of such an antiquated form of punishment should I ever be in charge of the world. The principal had decided a grade 9 boy's indiscretion merited corporal punishment, and the Saskatchewan Education Act attempted some regulation by requiring a witness. As vice principal, I was it. I don't remember the boy or his offense, but I sure remember the procedure. Following a lecture and explanation of the punishment, the principal grasped one of the boy's hands and held it steady, as the natural response is to pull your hand away when a blow is imminent. He delivered a sharp smack of the heavy leather strap, approximately 4 inches by 12 inches, then put it down so he could massage the guy's palm and soothe the sting. Another smack, another massage, 3 times on each hand. I wondered what university class taught this particular skill. My role was to observe and verify that the punishment had been administered without malice. In the 3 years I was vice principal, this was the only time the principal felt corporal punishment was warranted. Thankfully, the practice was falling out of favor even at that time. But it wasn't until 2005 that the Education Act was modified to ban the strap. For the next 11 years, I worked as principal in elementary schools. One of the most difficult aspects of administration was to be constantly vigilant regarding negative possibilities. Scrapes, cuts, and bumps are everyday occurrences where children gather. But a teacher or an administrator's worst fear is of a student being seriously hurt. It's easy to apply salve, bandages, and soothing words, But as we accept responsibility in loco parentis, our commitment is also to the emotional and physical safety of our charges. Every recess, physical education class, field trip, or even classroom lesson has danger lurking. So it's imperative that planning for positive educational and recreational outcomes includes preparing for possible negative consequences. The question behind every action has to be, what if? What if a child tumbles from gymnastics or playground equipment? What if a wayward toboggan wipes out an inattentive student? What if a student sticks his or her hand into the monkey cage or spooks a farm animal? What if a child runs across the street between crosswalks or down a wet and slippery hallway? Worry can be paralyzing, but micromanaging children's play and nagging about behaviors soon becomes meaningless. Kids need to explore and experiment to learn from their mistakes. The best we can do is use common sense to set out basic rules of conduct and be vigilant and fair and firm supervision. Accidents will happen. Susan loved the monkey bars and spent hours flipping herself hand over hand or hanging upside down. One recess she came into the school and announced she'd fallen. No tears, no fuss. In spite of the required pea gravel spread below the bars and her skill at swinging, it turned out she'd broken both wrists. Both. For several weeks she wore matching casts that presented more than a little difficulty in the completion of her academic work. But she, with her mom's help, cheerfully persevered. Sean broke his arm playing soccer with his buddies on the playground in the hour after the final bell. I was concerned his parents would think there should have been better supervision. But his dad received the news with a shrug. Kids break things. A friend related how his teenage son, perhaps imagining himself an Olympic athlete, had been pumping a swing higher and higher in an effort to flip over the top of the frame. Unsurprisingly, he fell and broke his leg. Dad's advice was, you'll have to work harder on your dismount. Teachers appreciate such pragmatic parents. It wasn't always easy to keep tabs on students, and that was a worry because we were responsible for them while parents expected them to be at school. One year, a kindergarten boy kept heading for home at recess, preferring his toys and his mom to the discipline of school, even though Mom had gone back to work. The teacher couldn't go in search, so Mom had to leave work several times to retrieve him and return him to the classroom. To everyone's relief, he eventually gave in. A grade 5 boy was absent for 3 days until we connected with his mother to find out he'd been staying home with his new puppy after she left for work. Needless to say, we revamped our system of checking on absentees. As vice principal of WABD, I was in charge of attendance. Often I made phone calls to wake students and remind them that they were late for school, sometimes waking the parent who hadn't woken the student. There were days when I prowled through neighboring streets looking for laggards after lunch hour. Once I headed to a nearby murky pool hall where I managed to pull a truant boy away from his video game and back to school. I was always amazed that those hulking teenage boys would obey this petite woman tripping along in high heels, Great Danes meekly following a poodle. There were times I asked myself, what if I had chosen to become a dentist? I was lucky to be able to spend one semester at the comprehensive high school. The single semester I worked at the Swift Current Comprehensive High School served as a postscript to my teaching career. The comp, with its 1,000 students and huge staff organized into academic and vocational departments, was a whole new world for me. I met young people who applied consistent and resolute effort, determined to complete grade 12 in order to move on with whatever goals they'd set for themselves. There were young people estranged from their families, living on their own, determined to pursue their studies with little or no support. There were those who were cheerful and cooperative, setting themselves apart from the bad asses, grateful for whatever help they could get from their other teachers and those of us who worked in the Learning Assistance Center. Much to my dismay, however, there were those who weren't a good deal more mature, skilled, or committed to learning than some of my junior high kids had been. For many, years of academic struggle and failure had jaded their view of learning until they believed the best they could hope for was a minimum passing grade. Some were there because their parents, or the court, insisted. Some were content to while away the time each day until they could escape to be with their friends, go to their part-time jobs, be outdoors on the farm or in their backyards modifying a vehicle's engine. Some were angry and aggressive, bullying others and taking pride in refusing to comply. It was preferable to be a badass than a dumbass. All in all, I appreciated and was intrigued by the varied personalities and levels of commitment these young adults demonstrated. During those 5 months, I also got to know and appreciate the many teachers who related so well to that age group. I remember when a few hundred additional students from several rural high schools arrived for a day of presentations regarding career opportunities. During the noon break, I walked through the halls, crowded with approximately 1,400 teenagers, 95% of them taller than I, and marveled at the fact that they allowed us to be in charge. And I came to retirement. 30 and a half years. Some days and weeks moved slower than a tortoise, but the months and years roared by like a freight train. Former students have greeted me on the street in Hawaii, at Grey Cup in Toronto, at a nephew's graduation in Calgary, and at a Saskatoon medical clinic where my husband's specialist was one of my former grade 8 students. They serve me at local businesses, come by to do plumbing and electrical work, and introduce their children, and sometimes grandchildren. Some have become colleagues and good friends. In education, change is a constant, even if some changes appear to us veterans like a pendulum swing to former practice. Not everyone accepts change equally. A convention speaker once equated acceptance of change to swinging on a trapeze across a void in an effort to land solidly on the other side. Some individuals gleefully grab the bar to take the leap, while others take time to analyze the situation and want to be assured of a safety net before crossing. Then there are a few who say, "No way I'm doing that." The pendulum will continue to swing. Methodology will continue to ebb and flow, and technology will play an ever-expanding part in education. I admire today's teachers for their creativity and resourcefulness. A teacher's role has gone from that of an authority figure transmitting information one way to that of a coach or facilitator. To my mind, the key to effective schooling continues to be personal interaction. As my segment of the evolutionary cycle ends, capable young men and women will carry on as educators, dedicated to helping students understand the past and the world around them, giving them the tools they'll need for the future. And I can go golfing. Thank you for tuning in. I hope my words have rekindled some childhood and school day memories, and that you'll be motivated to record your own stories. Thank you to my friend, artist Lori Bradford, who fashioned several cartoonish Diannes to sprinkle throughout the book. Thank you to those colleagues who allowed me to incorporate their wonderful stories. Thank you to Your Nicholsworth Publishing and to Creative Saskatchewan. Thank you to Dave Cyca for his great music, and to Joey Donnelly for his technical expertise in cobbling these segments together. And thanks again to Gord and Terry from Swift Currents Lyric Theatre. I'll add my call to our listeners to support the Lyric with a donation during this difficult time. Of course, should you be motivated to purchase a copy of Chalk Dust, you'll find it on the YNWP website, amazon.ca and .com, and here in Swift Current, it's available at PharmaSave and will be at the museum when it reopens. Or you can always contact me directly at dorm, D-O-R-M, at sasktel.net or 306-750-7892. I have curbside delivery or curbside pickup and would be willing to deliver within the city. Thanks for listening. Have a great evening and happy Father's Day to all dads tomorrow.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Wasn't that enjoyable? What an insight into not just the world of teaching, but all that communication shared over the years and inspiration for young people that Dianne Miller has brought to so many. Thank you, Dianne. And also thank you to the wonderful committee of Write Out Loud and to Joey Donnelly, who has once again put this show together in terms of stitching all the elements into the final video that you're watching. And if you can, help us out in terms of these tough times and share anything with us financially, we would be so appreciative. All you have to do is write a check to, or money order, to the Lyric Theatre, Box 1143, Swift Current, Saskatchewan, S9H3X3, or if you want to do an e-transfer, it's treasurer@lyrictheatre.ca. We'll see you very soon. We'll have another open stage, and we're going to have another Write Out Loud in July as well. And we have Youth Talent Night coming up. So stay safe, stay well, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.